This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're joined in the studio by New York State Secretary of State Walter Mosley, who recently highlighted the top 5 consumer complaint areas reported by New Yorkers as part of a scam prevention event in Albany. And he's here to discuss the concerns flagged for his department's Division of Consumer Protection and talk about what is being done about those complaints. Thanks for visiting us in the Capitol, Secretary Mosley.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
Well, before we reveal what the big area of complaints are, and I apologize in advance that we don't have a drum roll, I think it's important to remind listeners of why this is an issue of concern for the New York State Department of State, and that is because you have that Division of Consumer Protection.
Correct.
So can you give us a brief explainer about what the division is responsible for and what they do?
Well, the division is there to do 3 things: to bring about awareness to consumers in New York State. It's also about educating, and as well as about empowering, because we understand that oftentimes, as much as we try to protect ourselves and our family members and friends from being taken advantage of and fraudulent behavior, there will be times in which we will have to go through that. I've gone through it. I'm sure enough people that you know, if you haven't gone through it, have been defrauded of hard-earned cash. And, we're talking about affordability, and oftentimes we talk about how do we keep costs down. But a lot of times we also talk about how we can do addition by subtraction, making sure that people's hard-earned money is not taken from them unbeknownstly, or because of bad practices or business policies that unfortunately are exercised on a daily basis, whether you're talking about known brands or mom and pop stores. And we're here at the Department of State to not only give you that level of empowerment in terms of information as to how to report them, but also how to win back money in terms of millions of dollars that we've been able to give back to New Yorkers because they've gone through a particular issue or have been defrauded of money or have received goods or services that are below their expectation. So we understand that this last week was Consumer Protection Week, but we understand that consumer protection is a 365-day a year practice for us at the Department of State within our Division of Consumer Protection.
Well, I want to get into the mechanics of the division, but listeners have tuned in because they are anxious to know that top 5 list. So can you walk us through the broad strokes of those 5 areas where you got the sort of the most complaints?
So before I go into the top 5, I just want the listeners to know, because the listeners are consumers and consumers are listeners. It does not mean that your well-known retailers or your well-known commercial entities are not a part of this. This scans the gambit. So some of the 5 things that we often see within our Division of Consumer Protection in terms of complaints that are made are business policies and practices related to retail policy and return policies, gift cards, certificates and credit card surcharges, automobile and recreational vehicles as it relates to warranties, repairs, towing, leasing of new and used vehicles. We also see a lot of activity in the merchandise and products category in terms of pricing and labeling and safety and making sure that the consumer's expectations are being met based upon what has been advertised. Likewise, professional services in terms of billing and quality of services from licensed businesses and professionals such as medical providers and spas and salons and real estate brokers. And last but certainly not least, something that's all too common is when we're talking about orders and deliveries, when we're talking about orders and deliveries of goods purchased, including missing items, incorrect items received, or late or delayed delivery. These are all probably the top 5. They range from 1 to 5, but commonly they make the top 5 on an annual basis, unfortunately.
So then, what happens with these complaints? Can you walk us through what the division does? Is all of this handled internally, for example? Do you work with partners like the Attorney General's office or maybe other relevant stakeholders?
So there's 2 ways in which we deal with consumer complaints. Obviously, what's going on in the Middle East is an enticing situation for retailers to manipulate markets by price gouging. And the Attorney General has on her website a way in which you can report that information, provide any relevant information so that they can catalog it and keep it in their files in case they have to actually go to court to validate what they're seeking out in terms of remedies. But on the daily basis, we have our hotline, 800-697-1220, for individuals who are dealing with consumer complaints. And what we try to do is we try to make this as seamless as possible. We understand that not only are we here to take the complaint, but oftentimes we're there to advocate on behalf of our constituents, understanding that we want to find a remedy that's germane to their particular issue and concern. So we handle these cases on a consumer basis. We understand that this is an ongoing thing, but we handle we handle thousands of these complaints. We ascertain millions of dollars back to consumers, understanding that people work hard for their money, and when they buy something, whether it's online or in person, that they are expecting what they purchased. And when they don't, it's up to us as stewards of the state to make up for that difference, either in getting what they actually purchased or remedying the situation by retrieving their hard-earned money back into their pockets.
Well, before we move on, let me reintroduce you for listeners just joining us. This is WCNY's The Capitol Press Room, and we're speaking with New York Secretary of State Walter Mosley, who's running down some of the major consumer complaints that his Division of Consumer Protection has received over the last year. And if you have a complaint, you can call 1-800-697-1220, and those hopefully are not related to the Capitol Press Room. But I want to follow up on the idea of what you do with these complaints. So if you find something that maybe is systemic in nature, do you then flag it for the legislature and say, hey, maybe here's a problem that needs to be addressed with law? Because some of the things that you talked about here are things that we've either seen the legislature act on or are existing in pending bills. So I have to imagine there is some sort of conversation.
Yeah, so like I said, in terms of market manipulation, price gouging, that's something that we work in correlation with the Attorney General's office. One of the things that we're seeing a lot of now is the use of AI advancing crime. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much information in the public domain, whether you're talking about information online, your personal platforms that you have, pictures that are accessible. A lot of people scrape this, these various places of entry to get information on people. And obviously, you don't need an advanced degree. You don't have to be overly sophisticated, but ultimately sometimes that AI is not only advancing technology, it's also advancing crime. So when we're talking about the top five, a lot of that is integrated within artificial intelligence. And the governor has put forth packages in terms of protecting consumers, protecting young people from these bad actors, because a lot of our transaction now, unfortunately, is not face-to-face anymore. It's online. Trusting that the retailer is providing us with accurate information, but sometimes people are taken, and we have to be there to assist them in trying to get their money back, to rectify the situation, but also to catalog that information so that we understand what are the patterns and practices and trends that are happening in the retail world, in the service world, when it comes to business policies and practices, even by those who are bad actors. So there's a lot that's going on in terms of us working with sister agencies that have the teeth to provide assistance from a prosecutorial standpoint. But we also have to understand we have to be kind of ahead of the game when it comes to artificial intelligence and understanding that, bad actors are out there looking to take advantage of all New Yorkers, regardless of your age, regardless of where you live, regardless of your background or your socioeconomic standing.
Well, a recurring issue in New York, and one that New York was ahead of the curve on more than 2 decades ago, is this issue of nuisance calls. New York, one of the first states to set up a do not call registry. I don't see that specifically itemized out in this list. Maybe that means it's because it's not in a top 5. Maybe it's because it sort of folds into these things. But does that continue to be a big problem that you guys are aware of? Because I know we've spoken with the head of your Division of Consumer Protection a few years ago, when they were looking to take on additional steps. Yeah,
well, the do not call hotline is something that we definitely man. It's something that was at the forefront of, making sure that New Yorkers are not harassed by business owners and those who are looking to sell of services and products. And we're always going to be looking to make sure that that is enforced and that is something that is a viable tool to New Yorkers and consumers. But we also have to, not remain still. We also have to understand that, there are other avenues by which these same individuals who are, harassing New Yorkers, with unwanted, unsolicited telephone calls are the same actors who are now looking for different ways to harass those same
Sure.
consumers. So we understand that we can't just operate in silos. We have to kind of integrate our approach to protecting New Yorkers and understand that as sophisticated as criminals are, we have to be equally as sophisticated, if not more so, because understanding that crime and fraudulent behavior is always evolving. And they're always looking for new tools, new ways in which to interact with consumers, whether it be legitimate or illegitimate, as it relates to their original intentions, but ultimately understanding that what they're putting out there as products to be sold and purchased are truthful, but at the same time understanding that if there is any delay or if there's any discrepancy in the services that are provided, that we have remedies for our consumers throughout the state of New York that will make them as whole as possible.
Well, lastly, on that point of trying to stay ahead of the curve, earlier this year, you put out a sort of heads up about people who might be interested in booking a spring or summer vacation. And I'm curious, how do you go about trying to be proactive with this type of work?
Well, one of the things is obviously doing things like this, giving people information in real time, giving it to them before they actually have to go through this, right? It's something that unfortunately we can't escape.
Because I imagine a lot of this is cyclical. There's going to be certain scams that pop up with certain events or seasons.
Yep. But our job is to give New Yorkers, like I said, to continuously make them aware. We do face-to-face workshops throughout the year, throughout the state. So it's not something that we just do from our offices or from our studios. We actually speak to New Yorkers. I was actually at a facility in Albany, at a recreation center in downtown Albany, speaking face-to-face with seniors when it comes to fraudulent activities that they should be aware of. And, we have an entire staff that does that all year round. And it's not something that we tend to kind of prop up, but it's something that we're not looking for praise. We're looking to, empower New Yorkers. So they're educated with the up-to-date, most prevalent, fraudulent activities that are taking place. And it changes from season to season, from month to month, from day to day. And it's unfortunate. But if so long as we are of the proper mindset to match that and to exceed it, I think we're in a far better position than most states.
Well, lastly, are you looking for any additional tools, whether it's statutorily or personnel-wise, to do this work?
We're always looking to find different ways in which to communicate information. We know that everybody's not on the internet. We know everybody doesn't have social media platforms. But the more avenues in which consumers can actually exercise their purchasing power, the more we have to do to expand services and explaining the pitfalls of doing so. Does that mean that we have to expand on staffing? No, I think what we have to expand on is upon our sophistication to understand what's happening in real time. And that means talking to our sister agencies, talking to our constituents, remaining vigilant in terms of getting information from them, talking, for me and my staff, we're New Yorkers. We're also consumers that work at the Department of State. So oftentimes I tell them about something I've gone through.
Sure.
And vice versa. So our job really is to keep an open mind in terms of, one, we don't know everything, but two, as a collective, as a state, we do know everything so long as we keep the lines of communication open. So I think that's the most important thing. We want to stress the issue of affordability, but like I said, a lot of that comes from addition through subtraction. making sure that New Yorkers that are spending their money, they're spending it for what it was intended. And if we can do that, I think we're in the right track.
Well, we've been speaking with New York Secretary of State Walter Mosley. Secretary, thank you so much for making the time.
All right, thank you, David. I appreciate it.
And if listeners want to file a complaint, that number to call is 1-800-697-1220. Thanks for listening to today's edition of the Capitol Press Room. For an insider take on what's happening in state government, check out our Dispatches from Planet Albany show, available wherever you get podcasts or at capitolpressroom.org.
Join us again for Capitol Press Room, a production of WCNY Connected, Syracuse.